Hello, thank you for joining. Thank you for joining. If you can hear me, please can you indicate in the chat section? If you can hear me, can you just drop a message in the chat box that you can hear me? Okay, can anybody drop a message in the chat box if you can hear me clearly? If you can hear me clearly, kindly drop a message in the chat box. You are welcome. You are welcome to today's session on technical bid analysis or evaluation techniques for rotating equipment. We are going to start in the next 1 or 2 minutes. So please kindly confirm if the audio is okay. Kindly confirm if the audio is okay. So if you can hear me, just drop a message for me in the chat box. I would like to see your comments before I proceed. Okay, we are starting now. Just want to confirm the audio and everything is set so that we can. Okay, good. O'Neill, thank you for joining. Thank you for joining. So the audio is good. All right. All right. We are starting shortly. We are starting shortly. Please kindly share on your status, kindly share on your with your networks. We are starting very soon. Okay, good. Kenneth, thank you very much. Thank you, Kenneth. Thank you. So kindly share on your on LinkedIn, kindly share on your WhatsApp status. We want as many viewers as possible to join us in this session. It promises to be very exciting. There are a lot of things to learn today. So in the next 1 minute, we are going to start. We're going to start. Okay, Kenneth, Asogban, Godwin, thank you. Thank you for joining. Okay, so without wasting our time, we are going to move straight to what we have for today. Today we are looking at technical bid analysis or evaluation techniques for rotating equipment. And the case study that we'll be looking at among the rotating equipment is we'll be looking at centrifugal pumps as a typical example. So like I mentioned, we are looking at technical bid analysis techniques, technical bid evaluation techniques for rotating equipment with a case study on centrifugal pumps. I'm going to be the facilitator. So the outlines for what we have for today is you are going to, for those that are that are getting to know me for the very first time. So I'm going to tell you a little about myself as the facilitator and my area of expertise. After that, we'll be looking at what is technical bid evaluation. Then after the technical bid evaluation, we'll look at procedure for carrying out technical bid evaluation. And of course, we are considering rotating equipment with a case study on centrifugal pumps. And lastly, we will also look at typical technical bid analysis sheets for centrifugal pump as a case study. So whatever you are going to learn today, you can always make use of it in your respective company, your respective projects. So straight away I will move to introduction about myself. Um, if you can hear me, just say you can hear me. Just say you can hear me so that I'll know you are following me. Just say you are following. Please just drop a message for me in the chat box. If you can hear me, just drop a message. You can hear me. Hear me. It is loud and clear. All right. It is loud and clear. It is loud and clear. It is loud and clear. Okay. So we are going to move straight to what we have for today, and that is introduction. The very first thing is introduction about myself. My name is Engineer Olusegun Rotimi Gabriel. I'm a highly competent current registered mechanical engineer. COREN in Nigeria is the Council for Regulation of Engineering in Nigeria. So I have a progressive 12 years of oil and gas experience delivering large, complex cogeneration combined cycle power plants in Africa. I'm highly skilled in front-end and detail engineering design of power systems, mechanical designs of static and rotating equipment. So that's my area of strengths: detail engineering design, front-end engineering design of mechanical designs of static equipment like pressure vessels, columns, heat exchangers, and same thing with rotating equipment, pumps, compressors, steam turbine, and gas turbines. I have to my credit over 10 HAZOP studies. HAZOP is hazard operability studies. So I have to my credit over 10 HAZOP studies that I've handled as the owner engineer to a lot of facilities, for local and international companies. I have been involved in several projects in Nigeria, one of which is Dangote refinery and petrochemical projects. In Nigeria, we are building a world largest single train refinery. So I happen to be one of the engineering team, and at the same time, Dangote fertilizer projects, I was among the engineering team that handled the basic and detail engineering, of Dangote refinery and petrochemical for over 2 years in India with Engineers India Limited in New Delhi, India. So I've been involved in contracts and construction management. I've handled planning and budgeting, resource deployment, contracts and purchase, the preparation of schedule of rates, drafting specification, reviewing standards, and carrying out several drawing reviews and HAZOP studies. I've also been involved in pre-commissioning activities and commissioning activities of several oil and gas facilities, including power plants and various chemical industry related process and mechanical equipment. So since I came back to Nigeria, I've taken it as a duty to share my technical knowledge, by preparing engineering graduates or professionals for a competitive job market with indisputable and unignorable job skills, through different specialized form of trainings, such that employers will find such well-paid graduates irresistible. So if this is the first time you are coming across my channel, please do well by subscribing to the channel. From time to time, I upload different tutorial sessions on my YouTube channel. I've uploaded, we are currently looking at pump series, centrifugal pump series, and once we are done with that, we are going to move straight to compressors. We are going to talk about different types of compressors, and mostly my trainings are always with respect to detail engineering, detail engineering perspective. So we move to compressors, we move to steam turbines, and at the same time gas turbines. So once we are done with rotating equipment, we are also going to move to mechanical designs of various static equipment such as pressure vessels, storage tanks, heat exchangers. So please just subscribe to the channel so you can always get notification when different video tutorials are uploaded. So for what we have for today, we we have technical bid evaluation. Technical bid evaluation. What is technical bid evaluation? This is a very interesting topic for engineering professionals, because in one way or the other along the line you are going to come across an activity which will require you to carry out a detailed technical bid evaluation of vendors offers, or you do vendor offer review. So to start with, for the benefit of the young professionals among us, technical bid evaluation is nothing but technical bid evaluation or vendor offer review is an important step before you carry out any final procurement. So for all items, for all equipment, be it rotating equipment, be it package equipment, you have a document called MR. That MR is material requisition. So you have a material requisition document that must have been prepared and sent to different vendors. And of course, these vendors that we are talking about must have been vendors among those listed in your list of approved vendors, by your project team. So this MR document, this material requisition document, is prepared and sent to vendors, stating the requirements for any item on a specific project. So based on their experience, based on the vendors availability, different vendors will therefore provide their bids, they provide their offers. So all these offers, all these bids need to be reviewed before selecting the final vendor. So that is what brought about technical bid evaluation. Before any final procurement is going to be done, you are going to carry out an activity called technical bid evaluation. So what is technical bid evaluation? Basically, technical bid evaluation, we assess the technical capability. Don't forget, technical capability along with several quality, along with compliance with codes, because various equipment we have in oil and gas industry, even manufacturing industries, they are governed, their basic designs are governed with respect to one code or the other, one standard or the other. So during technical bid evaluation, what you do is you assess the technical capability, along with this quality, along with the vendor compliance with the respective codes governing the basic designs of the equipment. You also check compliance with standards and specifications governing the basic designs of the equipment. You also look at the experience, the operating costs, and the performance penalties, to meet the project specific requirements as well as execution capability. So whether for a complex procurement or a more straightforward contract, you need a well-planned and implemented bid evaluation process, because you don't want to be the engineer responsible for installing noisy equipment. You don't want to be the engineer responsible for frequent breakdown equipment in your plant. So whether it's for a complex procurement or just a simple straightforward contract, you need to carry out a well-planned and implemented bid evaluation process. So it is that bid evaluation process that we want to talk about today. We want to look at the procedure in which you carry out this bid evaluation technically, and then we'll be making reference to rotating equipment as we move on, and special consideration to what? To rotating to centrifugal pump. So next we are moving to procedure for technical bid evaluation. Procedure for technical bid evaluation with reference to rotating equipment, and the case study says centrifugal pump. As the job engineer, if you are the job engineer and you are responsible for carrying out technical bid evaluation, the very first thing you have to do is that after receiving several vendors offers, so you have to check the completeness of the bids. That is very, very important. you have to check the completeness of the bids submitted by the respective vendors, with respect to the data or with respect to the drawing requirements as specified in your material requisition. Don't forget I mentioned that before any final procurement is done, you must have prepared a document called material requisition, and in which you must have stated all the data, all the drawing, all the equipment requirements in this document, and you will have sent it to different vendors. So it is this document that the vendors will now use to prepare their own offer, to prepare their own bid, which will now be submitted to you as the job engineer. So as the job engineer, your very first activity that you need to carry out is to carry out a technical bid evaluation, and you have to check the completeness of these bids with respect to the data requirements as specified in your material requisition. So you review the bids vis-a-vis the requirements specified in your material requisition in respect to several conditions, with respect to acceptance of the offer, with respect to what is called BEC. BEC is a bid evaluation criteria. This bid evaluation criteria must have been the set of benchmarks and standards that you have set against which performance of the equipment, right? So you are going to check the acceptance of the vendor offer with respect to the bid evaluation criteria, which are basically the set of benchmarks that you have set against several criteria. You are also going to look at the acceptance of the equipment with respect to the equipment qualification criteria. So you carry out this bid evaluation by checking all these things. Now next, you are going to look at the technical acceptance with respect to the following. We are going to look at a typical technical bid analysis sheet. So where you will see different points that you will have to check by considering rotating equipment as a case study. So part of your procedure for carrying out technical bid evaluation is you are going to look at the technical acceptance with respect to the equipment sizing criteria, equipment performance. You are going to also look at constructional features. What are the constructional features of the equipment that the vendor is intending to submit to you? Is it in line with respect to the applicable standards and codes governing the basic designs of the equipment you are intending to purchase? You are also going to look at the constructional features. You are going to look at material of construction. How to check all this, we are going to also talk about it in the course of this session. And of course, what are the various inspection and test requirements as stated in the applicable standards, as stated in the applicable codes governing the designs of the equipment you are intending to purchase. And of course, you are also going to look at scope of supply and work. And lastly, deviations. If there is any deviations from the vendor, you are also going to look at. So the job as a job engineer, your role will now be to prepare what is called technical bid analysis sheet. Technical bid analysis sheet, right? On formats as per list of formats, or on other need-based format indicating the following information as a minimum for the offered equipment. So in your technical bid analysis sheet, you are going to make a reference to the make that the vendor is about to supply to you, the model. Then you look at the brief performance and constructional features, including the material of construction. We are going to look at a typical technical bid analysis sheet, so you can have a very good knowledge of what I'm trying to talk about. And then, like I mentioned, you are also going to look at the scope of supply, as per MR, as per your material requisition. You will check the provenness of the proposed machine model, the list of mandatory spares. As your vendor submitted the list of mandatory spares, if any, Now you will check the technical acceptability or technical non-acceptability of the bid. So how to carry out all these steps are what I'm going to discuss in this course of training session today. So, and of course, in case any bid is technically not acceptable, the reasons for rejection must be highlighted on the technical bid analysis sheet. So without wasting our time, so we are going to look at a typical technical bid analysis sheet. What are the information that are very important, that needs to be on your technical bid analysis sheet? You see, there are general requirements and there are special requirements. Okay, so when you prepare a technical bid analysis sheet for, say, centrifugal pump as a typical example of rotating equipment, so you see you see serial number, you see description, now your requirements, and then you list the vendors as you have here. You list the vendor. In this case, if you have 5 vendors, you list the vendors as you have in this column: vendor 1, vendor 2, vendor 3, vendor 4, vendor 5, regardless of the number of vendors that you have. And then you have a list of description in which you are going to check the compliance of each of these vendors with respect to this description. So number 1 is the pump model. The pump model. What is the model that this vendor 1 is intending to supply to you on this particular project? You are going to look at the type of the equipment. There are different types of centrifugal pumps, basic designs as specified in API 610. Now, what is the number of stages? So you will list for each vendor. Vendor 1, for example, you have GE. Then vendor 2, say you have a flow serve, as in the case of centrifugal pump. So, and if you have vendor 3, you have vendor 4. So what is the pump model? What is the type? You can see here the requirement is by vendor. You have OH2. The type of centrifugal pump this particular vendor say is about to you need for your plant is OH2. You have OH1, OH2, OH3. Then you have a single stage. So now the vendor is supplying you with a model of 4X 11TC with a single stage. And then now the next thing is you check, is the offered pump model, is it suitable for the specified operating condition? Because you must have specified the operating conditions, for the vendor in your process data sheet. So this pump model offer, it is important that it shall be from the existing pump model series. It shall be from the existing pump model series, and shall be from the regular manufacturing range of the vendor. So these are the things that you will need to check. You have a list of description that you have written. Now you will check this list of description with respect to the vendor. Now it is important that the model that the vendor is about to supply to you shall be from the vendor's existing pump model series. Nothing must be outside its model series, and shall be from its regular manufacturing range of the vendor. All right, the mechanical as well as the hydraulic performance, including NPSH for the complete range of operation of the offered model, shall have been established in the shop test. So the offered pump model shall meet the minimum service and manufacturing experience specified. So when a vendor is supplying a particular model to you, these are the things that you need to check. You have to check whether the model offered is from the existing pump model series of the vendor. Is it his regular manufacturing range? All right. Is the offered pump model, is it meeting the minimum service and manufacturing experience specified? Now, another thing is for centrifugal pump. This is a typical technical bid analysis sheet for a centrifugal pump. Now, another thing that you need to check if it is centrifugal pump is, now it's whether the rated operating points, because the rated operating points must have been specified by the particular vendors. So it's the rated operating point, is it within 70% to 110% of the best efficiency point flow rate? The best efficiency point flow rate is actually the flow rate at which the centrifugal pump has the maximum efficiency. So the pump this particular vendor is about to supply to you, is the rated operating point, is it within the 70 to 110% of the best efficiency point flow rate? If it is yes, you will indicate yes under a particular vendor. So for vendor 1, yes. For vendor 2, if it is yes, you will indicate, because this criteria will be the one that you will have to look at one after the other to confirm the technical acceptability of the model he is intending to supply to you. So the performance curves, of course, of the pumps must have been furnished by the vendor along with the proposal. So the pump selection shall be mandatorily, like I said, shall be mandatorily based on the rated operating point. That is the rated flow and the head falling between 70 to 110% of the best efficiency point flow rate applicable to the rated impeller diameter. Please, you need to note that the non-compliance to this condition shall be a total rejection criterion. So the manufacturer proposal must have include the power consumption curve. All right, must have include the power consumption curve and the NPSHR curves. The NPSHR is the net positive suction head requirement, which is the pump characteristics, from the minimum continuous flow to end curves. So the vendor must have indicated what you know as preferred operating region and the allowable operating region on the characteristics curve, because these are the things that you will need to check when you are carrying out technical bid evaluation, when you are analyzing the bid submitted by the respective vendors. On this, you will check the operating speed. What is the operating speed that this particular vendor is about to supply to me? What is the minimum continuous flow for this particular equipment I'm about to purchase from this vendor? So this data must have been supplied by the respective vendor during the bid submission. So you will list it against the following description. Now, what is the operating speed? Now, for vendor 1, you can say you have 2,950 RPM. What is the minimum continuous flow for this intending equipment that I'm about to purchase? 96.5 cubic meter per hour. For vendor 2, what is his own data? For vendor 3, what is his own data? For vendor 4, what is his own data? All right. So this information, if it is not provided, you will say not provided, because these conditions will be what will eventually affect the vendor's offer, the vendor bid, by the time you are making your final decision on the respective vendor to go for. Now, another thing that you have to check when you are carrying out technical bid analysis sheets for rotating equipment with a typical case study of centrifugal pump. Other rotating equipment also have several basic design conditions governing the basic design of the equipment with respect to the applicable standards of the equipment. So we are only looking at centrifugal pump for today, and these are some of the basic design conditions that has been specified in API 610, which is the standards governing the basic design of centrifugal pump. So you list all these design conditions. Now you check on the bids submitted by the different vendors. Now this information, is it provided? If it is not provided, say not provided. Check the second design condition, is it provided? If it is not provided, you move to the next. Now the next description that you have to look out for, in a bid submitted by any vendor, is the impeller diameter. The impeller diameter for the centrifugal pumps that you are about to purchase. Of course, like we said, the vendor must have submitted the performance curves or the characteristics curve. So on this, you will see this data. Now, what is the minimum impeller diameter? It must supply you with minimum impeller diameter. What is the rated impeller diameter? What is the maximum impeller diameter? All this data is very important, because these are the data that you will eventually use to carry out a thorough technical evaluation of the mechanical data sheet submitted by the vendor you finally chose. So during the bid analysis, because you have several vendors that have submitted their offer, so you need to do a thorough analysis of vendor 1, vendor 2, vendor 3, vendor 4, vendor 5 before you finally shortlist 1 or 2, and then you look at their respective process data sheets and mechanical data sheets and carry out a thorough, detailed technical calculations, to check their compliance with respect to the design, with respect to the standards governing the design of the equipment that you are intending to purchase. So if any vendor among the vendors that submitted their bids did not provide this information, is it that you take notes on the vendor offer, or on your bid analysis sheet you will indicate for that particular vendor not provided by the vendor. Okay, so the next information that you will have to look out for is the percentage increase in head possible. The percentage increase in head possible by changing of the impellers. You see, these are some of the requirements. These are some of the standard requirements as stated in API 610. So it is expected that all pump vendors, right? The pump vendors, the pump manufacturers intending to supply a particular pump, a particular centrifugal pump to meet your process requirement, must meet some of these basic design requirements. So one is that percentage increase in head possible. As per requirement, it has to be greater than 5%. How to check all this in the course of some of the trainings? How do you check percentage increase in head possible? This is another area that you have to learn during the technical evaluation, and some of the videos that have been uploaded on my YouTube channel I've explained how to check, how to carry out a thorough technical evaluation of this. But first and foremost, for the purpose of the bid analysis, you just need to check that the percentage increase in head, is it possible? Now if it is as stated by the vendor, is it possible? If it is possible, you write yes. If the vendor said it's not possible, you write not possible according to the vendor, because it's going to affect, it's going to be a major criteria that you're going to consider before you finally make your decision. Now you also look at percentage of head rise from rated head to shut-off head. You look at maximum shut-off pressure. You see, the pumps, centrifugal pumps, shall have stable head or flow rate curves for all applications. So if parallel operation is specified for your process requirement, the head rise from rated point to shut-off shall be at least 10%. So it's the vendor meeting that condition. If it's not meeting that condition, you have to state it on your technical bid analysis sheet, because this would be some of the conditions that will determine the technical acceptability of its bid. like you see, percentage of head rise from rated head to short of head. What is the percentage according to the vendor? As stated in API 610, say the pump, for parallel operation, if you specify parallel operation, the head rise from rated point to short of head shall be at least 10%. Now, is this particular vendor meeting this condition? So if it is meeting this condition, you write the percentage value under the section of the respective vendor, because you are going to look at some of these conditions and to determine the technical acceptability of its bids. Then you also check the maximum shut-off pressure. Is the maximum shut-off pressure greater than your design pressure? Because of course that will be a red flag. Your maximum shut-off pressure has to be less than or equals to design pressure. Now, on its bid, it is on the performance characteristics curve, right, that a particular vendor has submitted to you. Is the maximum shut-off pressure supplied by the vendor less than or equals to your own design pressure? If it is less than or equals to your design pressure, you write yes under the particular vendor. If it is no, you will write no, because these are indicators. These are indicators for different vendors to determine the technical acceptability of their bids. Now, next is you look at your NPSHA. Of course, you must have, because your NPSHA is the net positive suction head available. We have discussed extensively on this YouTube channel, what the net positive suction head available is all about. So if you have not seen that, just check through my channel. You will see a session on net positive suction head available. So, and of course, the net positive suction head requirement. So, for the purpose of this session, when you are carrying out technical bid analysis, you see, you have to check the margin of your NPSHA and the NPSHR. Don't forget, your NPSHA is your own system characteristics, and that value, you must have submitted it to the respective vendors in order for them to determine their own NPSHR, because NPSHR is the pump characteristics. So you check the margin, right? And as per MR, as per your own MR, is the vendor meeting that margin? Because it is advised that the margin between your NPSHA and the NPSHR shall be ensured to be at least 0.6 meter, to prevent cavitation. So your support test curves for NPSHR must be provided by the vendor to support this claim. So failure to meet the requirement, this is a very important requirement. So failure to meet the requirement, of course, will lead to automatic rejection of the proposed pump model by the vendor. So this is why it is very important when you have 10 vendors submitting their bids to supply, an equipment to your plant. So this is why it is very important for you to do a thorough technical bid analysis apart from the financial aspect. So, and in doing this, in carrying out this technical bid analysis, you check some of these pointers as stated in the respective standards or codes governing the equipment you are intending to purchase. So for this case, centrifugal pump API 610. So the difference, what is the difference between the NPSHA that you have submitted to the vendor and the NPSHR the vendor is supplying you with? So you check, is it between at least 0.6 meter? If it is yes, you write yes. If it is no, you write no under each vendor, because it is a pointer in the end for you to determine which vendor to go for, right? Now, at the same time, you also check the installation depth. The installation depth, is it provided by the vendor? The installation depth for the equipment, is it provided? If it is not provided or if it is not applicable, you also do what? You also indicate. All right? So these are some of the things that you need to check when you are carrying out a technical bid analysis for different vendors. Now, the next thing for, of course, for centrifugal pumps, because that is the reference equipment we are looking at for today. So the next thing is the pump BKW. The pump BKW, of course, it has to supply you the rated BKW, the maximum BKW, the BKW at the minimum continuous flow with specific gravity, say 1.0. So you check the data sheet, you check the mechanical data sheet. What is the pump BKW for this vendor? What is the pump BKW for this vendor? For vendor 1, for vendor 2, for vendor 3, for vendor 4. What is the driver rating? So you list all these descriptions, against different vendors' data, because these are pointers to the vendor you will eventually go for. All right. So how to calculate the pump BKW, how to check the driver ratings, that is another case. And of course, I've also discussed this in one of our sessions on the YouTube channel. So if you are yet to see it, just check through my YouTube channel. You will see technical evaluation of centrifugal pumps, from detail engineering perspective. So your pump BKW, because usually, as stated in API 610, usually for electric motor drivers, your pump shall have a minimum continuous ratings. So you check the pump rated BKW that has been supplied by the vendor. If it is up to 22 kilowatts, what does API 610 says to determine the motor maximum continuous rating or the driver rating? Up to 22 kilowatts, as stated in API 610, it says that your motor MCR should be at least 25% higher than the pump BKW. Now, is this vendor meeting this condition? If it is meeting this condition, that is a pointer for you. If it is not meeting this condition, that is a pointer for you to look at. All right? You check, is the pump BKW, is it between 22 kilowatts to 55 kilowatts? Now, if it is within that, is the motor MCR, is the driver rating at least 15% as stated in API 610? Okay, is the vendor meeting this condition? If it's meeting this condition, you state it under the particular vendor. Now, if it is greater than 55 kilowatts, what does API 610 says? Your motor MCR, your driver rating shall be at least 10% higher than your pump BKW. Now, is this particular vendor on its bid meeting this condition? If it's not meeting this condition, you have to. It's a pointer for you to also take notes on your technical bid analysis sheet. All right. Now you check the driver, the vendor is about to supply with the equipment. Is it suitable for your process condition if you have a parallel operation? Or is it suitable for open discharge valve? Or is it suitable for EOC? EOC is end of curve condition. Because you are going to have these conditions. So if it is suitable, you indicate under the respective vendor. Now, you also look at the power to be considered for price loading purposes. If it is applicable, you state it. If it is not applicable, you also do what? You also state it. Now, on the technical bid analysis, you also have to consider, your suction nozzles. Has the vendor submitted, supply you with the suction nozzle sizes, the ratings? What is the rating? What is the facing? What is the position of the suction nozzle? What is the discharge nozzle size? What is the rating? What is the facing? The position? So these are the things that you have to list under the respective vendor. Under the respective vendor, because it's a pointer in the end to finally decide on, the vendor to go for. Now, then the next thing that you have to consider is will be the seal type. It's going to be the seal type. The seal type, is it going to use mechanical seal? Is it going to use packing? Right? Is it going to use mechanical seal? Is it going to use packing? So if it's mechanical seal for all applicable, for all applicable flushing plants, the vendor must include in his scope of supply. He has to include in his scope of supply. Okay? Now, what is the plan? What is the seal type? In this case, is it plan 11? Is it plan 52? You check with respect to each vendor, the seal type. Now, what is the material of construction? What's the material of construction? What is the material of construction? Because you must have stated this in your MR. Now, is the material of construction in line with what is stated as per your MR? If it is yes, you write yes for the respective vendor. For vendor 1, for vendor 2, for vendor 3. Then you look at the scope of supply, the design, the engineering, the manufacture, the procurement of materials, the bought out equipment, the assembly at shop. So these are some of the factors as the vendor provided you with this information on his data sheet. So these are the things that you will check, which must have been stated in your MR. So is the vendor, in line with what is stated as per MR? So if it is yes, you will indicate with respect to the vendor, yes or no. Okay? Then the next will be to look at the supply of mandatory spares. Will there be supply of mandatory spares? If there's going to be supply of mandatory spares, right, you must have stated it in your material requisition. So now, is the vendor having deviation to that? Has the vendor supply you with quotation of 2 years normal operation and maintenance spares, right, which as required by the vendor? So the vendor's proposal shall as a minimum include the following. Of course, the list of recommended commissioning spares. As the vendor supply you with this list of recommended commissioning spares in the offer, has he listed the mandatory spares? Has he listed the spare parts for 2 years normal operation? So these are some of the things, these are some of the data that you will look out for when you are carrying out technical bid analysis of different vendors. Because if this is not provided, this will be a pointer to you to decide whether you want to go for this vendor or you want to go for another vendor. All right? Then, of course, the supervision of erection and commissioning activities, has it been listed as required in your MR by the vendor? So you look at drawings submitted and documents as per vendor data requirement. Is it as per what you list on in your material requisition? If it is yes, you will indicate yes. If it is no, you will indicate no for any vendor. You also look at the inspection and test that you must have stated in your MR, because there's going to be general inspection, testing, and preparation for shipment. So prior to start of test, you see, the manufacturer have to furnish you with the certificate of latest calibration or recalibration of driver and measuring instruments for review by purchasers inspection agency. All right, so this information, is it in the vendor bid? If it is not in the vendor bid, you will indicate on your technical bid analysis sheet, because this is a pointer. Don't forget, what you are doing is you are trying to evaluate the several vendors. You are trying to evaluate the bids that have been supplied to you by different vendors. So if a particular vendor meets all your requirements, if you have 2 or 3 out of 10 vendors that have supplied you enough data to carry out your technical evaluation, because after bid analysis you still have to do a thorough technical evaluation of the shortlisted vendors. So do you have enough data? So this is the stage that you will need to look out for this information. This is the stage that you will need to look out for what? This information, whether it is provided in his or her bid or not. So if it is not provided, then you have to indicate. Either you contact the vendor or you automatically disqualify the vendor. All right. So these are some of the things as stated in what? In API 610. You also look at, is there any technical deviations? Is there any technical deviations by the vendor? Because there may be deviations that the vendor is trying to propose. So whether it is acceptable to you, whether it is not unacceptable to you, you have to also indicate. So you look out for those information in their bids, in their offers. Now, is there any deviations to your listed design conditions, your design requirements, your project specifications? Is there any acceptable technical deviations? Is there any unacceptable technical deviations to specify technical codes and standards for the vendor? So if it is yes, you will indicate for a particular vendor. If it is no, you will also indicate for a particular vendor, because these are the information, these are the parameters that you will need to now sit down after a thorough analysis of, say, 5 or 10 vendors. So which of these vendors best meet the requirements as stated in the material requisition before you finally choose 1 or 2 or 3. All right. Now, another thing you have to look at is the proven track record of the vendor. All right, because the bidder shall mandatorily submit duly filled in experience record pro forma. See, for each pump item separately, whether the pump is supplying, the vendor is supplying you 10 pumps, different model, he has to it's mandatory that he submits the experience record pro forma. Of course, every project has, you must have prepared your experience record pro forma that different vendors will need to fill in their records for each equipment. So the bidder shall complete the experience record pro forma enclosed. It is usually with the bid document to amply prove that the offered pump or the intending pump model you want to offer my plant, you want to offer my project, meets the equipment qualification criteria for technical acceptance. You might be the best between bearing pumps and not be the best in overhung pumps. Are you with me? A particular vendor might be the best in vertically suspended pumps, VS1, VS2. That doesn't automatically mean that is the best in between bearing pumps, say BB5 for example, or OH2 pumps. So for different model of the pump you are intending to purchase, the vendor mandatorily he has to supply you the fill-in experience record pro forma for that pump model. So the question is,
Is the experience record of the offered model satisfactory to you? If it is yes, you will indicate yes in your technical bid analysis sheet. If it is no, you will also indicate, on the technical bid analysis sheet. These are very, very important. All right. So now, after these listed conditions, after these listed requirements, either as stated as per the applicable standards or codes governing the designs of the equipment you are intending to purchase, or your own project specification or project requirement, then you now check, now this vendor one, to what percentage has it met my conditions? 75%, 80%, 90%. Vendor two, to what percentage has it met these conditions as stated in my material requisition? 50%, 60%, 70%, 100%. And of course, if you have, say you have 10 vendors, so you can automatically determine to what extent of percentage is acceptable to you. So if your benchmark is 80%, so out of 20 vendors that have submitted their bids, which of these vendors, how many of these vendors has met, say, 80% or 85% of my requirements? So now you will indicate technical acceptability of the pump. If it is technically acceptable, you will indicate on the technical bid analysis sheet. If it is technically not acceptable, you will also indicate, because you will also have to pass this your TBA, your technical bid analysis sheet, to another department, say contract and purchase, where you have to look at other conditions, other criteria, such as operating costs and some other criteria. But technically, if you are the job engineer responsible for carrying out technical bid analysis, so these are some of the pointers that you need to look out for, that you need to check, to be able to do a thorough analysis of the respective bids, of respective offers that you have from different vendors, before you can finally say, oh, these 3 vendors out of 10 vendors that have submitted their bids have met 80% of our project requirement, has met 80% of the standards, the basic design conditions, governing the basic designs of this equipment. Now, after you now have 3 or 4 of these shortlisted or technically acceptable vendors, then another stage which will entails you to now carry out a detailed engineering, a thorough technical evaluation of their mechanical data sheets, the vendor drawings, the general arrangement drawings, the piping and instrumentation diagrams, to see whether there are some things that are not in line with your project requirements or the applicable standards or codes governing the design of this equipment. So these are some of the things that you need to check. Is the driver technically acceptable to you? If the driver is not technically acceptable to you, you have to indicate. Have you checked the driver rating? Is it in line with what is stated in API 610? All right. Now, you've checked your pump BKW, you check your preferred operating region, you check your allowable operating region, you've checked the margin between your NPSH and NPSH. Is it at least 0.6 meter? So, and of course, you make your decision. Overall technical acceptability of the offer. If the bid is going to be accepted, you write technically acceptable. If it's not going to be accepted, you write technically not acceptable. All right, so these are some of the things that you need to look out for when you are doing technical bid analysis sheets. You know, there are so many terminologies that that I make reference to in this session. So probably if this is the first time if you're young professionals or you want to refresh your knowledge about centrifugal pumps, you want to know how to check. One thing is to look out for this information. Now after you now have this information, how do you now do a thorough technical evaluation of this data? That's another thing. That's another responsibility. So in which I've taken my time to also explain in details how to do a technical evaluation of mechanical data sheet for different vendors. And in the next few days, we are going to be having a training session on centrifugal pumps basic design. We'll be looking at from detail engineering perspective. So we'll look at different vendor mechanical data sheets, how to do a thorough technical evaluation of this data sheet, right? So this is going to be the end of today's session. So I'm going to put the registration link under the description for the next upcoming training session. You can always message me to know how to register for the session. I think the session is going to start on the 18th of this month. So thank you for your time. If you have any question, you can always drop it at the comment section. I will look at those questions one after the other and then respond to it accordingly. So thank you very much. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate. Bye.